I'm just Nick, and today we're messing around with the Witch Pentavocal Trem pedal. Well, no doubt about it, okay, I'm not going to say no doubt about it. I'm going to say, to me, in my opinion, that is a very pretty sound. And the problem with this pedal is there's about 1 million more pretty sounds in it, and they're all pretty different. So we better just get right to talking about the controls on this thing, because if there's one thing that distinguishes this pedal, it's range. It's a huge diversity of sounds that can be had here, and a lot of subtlety and nuance as well. So we're going to start with the switches. You've got an on-off switch. When you switch it off, the LED goes off. When you switch it on, the LED indicates the tremolo rate. And then you have this switch here that switches you between sort of more smooth pulsing triangle wave or sine wave type tremolo, or more choppy square wave type tremolo. Okay, so those are your two switches. You have a velocity knob that functions as you'd expect, except that it's a little counterintuitive. Full counterclockwise is really fast, and full clockwise is incredibly slow, much slower than I've ever seen on any other pedal. The pedal becomes almost something like a volume pedal, or the old Boss slow gear pedal that would sort of emulate a volume pedal to do volume swell. So it has this incredibly slow speed if you want it. That's kind of cool, and I'm sure you could come up with some interesting uses for it. You've got a volume knob, which takes you all the way from no signal all the way up to a significant volume boost. Now this is really important on a tremolo pedal, because a tremolo pedal is in fact reducing your average volume anytime you step on it, all other things being equal, right? It's varying your volume from a maximum, which is what, you know, the signal you're putting into it, and it's decreasing it and bringing it back up. So anytime you step on a tremolo, unless you do something else to the signal to boost it, you're reducing your average volume. You step on it in the middle of a mix, live or even in the studio, and your volume's going to drop. Most tremolo pedals, if they don't have a volume control, will have some amount of volume boost built into them. This one gives you this huge range on the volume control, so you can set it just how you like it for the particular purpose. Very useful to have. So far, everything we've talked about you can find on other tremolo pedals, perhaps not with the huge range, but we're about to hit a control here, the so-called bottom control, that is one that I have not seen on another pedal. Maybe it exists, but I don't know of it. When we go full counterclockwise with the pedal, listen closely to the different frequencies in the guitar signal, in the guitar sound as the tremolo sweeps. Notice that the highs and the upper mids are actually not being tremoloed. They are not varying in volume. Only the lower frequencies are, which gives us a really nice, subtle but present pulse, but also keeps our highs intact and just steady. So you get this kind of interesting layered effect. If we go all the way clockwise, it's going to do the opposite. Listen. It's doing a lot more amplitude variation on the high frequencies and leaving the lows somewhat untouched, somewhat flatter. Of course, there's some overlap. There's different frequencies present in any of the strings or notes that you're playing besides the fundamental, so it's not an absolute kind of thing, but it's definitely a different quality, a kind of high shimmering with a solid bass or a low pulsing with a solid shimmering top end. How about that? That wasn't a bad explanation, all things considered. Now we get to the sort of signature feature of the Pentavocal Trem, which is the Pentavocal switch, which changes the EQ voicing of the pedal overall. Okay, so we start with a kind of very bright, shimmery, and slightly mid-range boosted sound. And a bit of a low cut as we begin to go clockwise. The voices get darker and thicker. And note, as I switch voices, there's actually a little bit more of a signal boost, I suspect, just because we're dealing here with a passive EQ circuit that is, we're adding back in frequencies that the voices 1 and 2 were cutting. And finally, voice number 5, nice, thick, full range. So just sort of theoretically infinite range. I don't want to stop playing around with it. There's just too many fun sounds to be had in here. I just feel like messing with it. And it's obvious pretty quickly that you can get any of the classic tremolo sounds out of this thing that you want, vintage sort of bias type or optical type sounds, swampy sounds, but you can also create a lot of far out effects. And the whole pedal is characterized by a kind of presence and a very sort of, I hate to use these words because they're just so overused, but kind of an organic quality. It sounds good. It sounds good. It sounds like it's melding with the amp. It doesn't sound in some way separate. It sounds thick. It sounds buttery. It sounds warm. All of those really horribly overused terms. I don't really have anything else to say about it. It's a cool pedal and unique. And you should give the folks at Rock and Roll Vintage here in Chicago a call, or hit them up online. And if this pedal is interesting you, talk to them about it, and they will hook you up. They will definitely hook you up. And they're cool people. And their gear's even cooler. And that's what we look for, right? Cool people, but even cooler gear. Rock and Roll Vintage. All right, till next time.